Alright, so this is Will, and we're going to take a look at this factory I/O, and we're going to take a look at the control I/O. I've had a little bit of a chance, a second look at it, and it actually is kind of cool. So I have factory I/O just opened up at the very basic, and what you want to do, this is the welcome screen. There is some documentation and tutorials, and it's got something for this control I/O, which is probably good if you're going to use that. Control I/O is without the PLC, so that's pretty good. If we go into scenes, it has all these scenes that are put in here, and we're just going to do the sorting by height basic, but some of these are fairly challenging. If you look at the automated warehouse, I know this pick and place XYZ thing I think is pretty challenging too, but right now for a demo we want to take a look at this. And this shows us the initial setup, and we have emitters and removers, and stuff come in the green down arrow and stuff gets removed at the red up arrows. And basically this will drop pallets on the conveyor. You have to move them. We have high boxes or tall boxes go up in the screen or to the left, and short boxes or small boxes go down in the screen or to the right. Now here you can see all these red lines. These are sensors, and actually let's take a view, and this has pretty good if you want to look at actuators or sensors, but we want to look at sensors because that's what we're going to do. And here we got a light array, and here it's the pallet sensor, it's a low sensor for a low box and a high sensor for a high box. They have this at left entry sensor that tells us when the conveyor is going this way, and well, we'll see that in here, but we need some of these sensors to tell us where the box is and whether it's been processed to a certain point. And let's see, you can also take a look. Let me turn off those tags for a second, but you can dock all tags, and this shows you all. Now the emitters and the removers, and I think in general by default they're always turned on. You don't want these turned on, you want them turned off. And actually if we look at this, and you can force them on and then you can release them. And you can see when I release that, this red light went off, and if I look at this one for the remover left, when I click this and release it, that will go off. So you see that went off, and I'm going to do the same with the emitter. Now the one thing I think it's great for teaching function is you can force these signals on to show what's happening. And before I do that, I'm just going to go over here. This is your play button, and it switches between edit and play. You want to be in play. This one is pause, so at any point you can pause it to see what's happening with these signals. And here you can reset the simulation and start over again. Now your sensors are all these orange signals. The actuators are these green with the vertical lines in there. And the ones that are lit up are normally active right now. So if we looked at these would be at a high voltage. Our sensors that initially we're going to be concerned with is the high sensor, the pallet sensor, and the low sensor. Those are all shadowed out, which means they're inactive or a low logic level, a low voltage level. And when the pallet goes through, they'll go turn to high, and we'll take a look at that. So we want to make sure that everything when we're actually running is forced off to initially start, but we'll walk through the program here. When I turn on the emitter, a box is going to drop right here. So I'm going to force it on just by clicking on the sensor, and you can see a box appears. Now it's going to stay there forever, and I have to figure out, okay, what do I do next? Now I happen to know that it's the conveyor entry signal, so I'm going to turn it on. Now because the emitter's on, forced on, after the box clears out of this emitter box here, I'm going to turn the emitter off. And I turn it off but just by hitting that force, clicking on the force, and that releases it. Otherwise we'll get several boxes appearing, and if you figure out the basic mode, then you can go and leave the emitter always running, but for right now you want to try the basic mode. So conveyor entry on. box clears, I'm going to turn this off. Now I'm going to pause it right about here, and you know, we have this array here that tells us pallet, low box, high box, and we haven't reached that yet. So you can see we haven't reached that you know, light array yet, or sensor array. But we're going to turn it on, and the first thing we're going to see is we're going to see the pallet go high, and then we're going to see, and I happen to know this is a tall box, so we're going to see both the high sensor and low sensor go high. So I'm going to try to quickly turn it off, or turn it on, pause, unpause it, and then repause it when we see the pallet sensor go high. Okay, well, and it was a bit too slow, but you can see the pallet sensor goes high, and then low sensor and high sensor goes high. And you know, if we look at it, obviously the pallet sensor goes high just a shade before the other sensors go high. And I'm just going to unpause it, but we need to know those sensor status to tell us that that's a high box. Now if I keep it running, you can see it stalls there, and the reason it stalls is the entry conveyor is only up to this point here. And then there's this little section here called a load conveyor. So even though it's kind of, I don't know, a little awkward, if I turn on the load conveyor, it will straighten itself out. And I'm going to unpause. And you can see it straightened itself out. Now I'll pause it again. Now it's in position to transfer to the left or up in the screen where it should, or if it was a small box on the right. Now the only thing I was going to point out is at this point our low sensor is low, our high sensor is low, and our pallet sensor is gone too, because we have cleared that light array. So this is the point where you can transfer whatever direction you're going, but because the sensors have cleared at this point, you're going to have to latch that signal in, and that's one of the things we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release all my signals. I'm going to get rid of this. So I'm going to clear the dock tags. I'm going to reset it and take it out of pause, and we're going to take a look at control I/O. So if we go into File and Drivers, you can go into here and you can pick your drivers, and basically it's Allen Bradley and Siemens. And then there's control I/O if you don't have it. I'm going to take a little look at this Modbus and see what that is. But you know, for instance, if we were using, let's say, Micrologics, and this was the last Micrologics that someone had picked out, but it gives you the actual addresses on the PLC that you have to use. So if I'm using a Micrologics, that high sensor is wired, and you know, it's all software, but think of it as being hardwired to that input B3 :0/0, and the outputs are on these outputs too, and you have to use those. Now we're going down to control I/O, and since, let me minimize this for a second, since we don't have a PLC, there's nothing there. So I'm still going to have it in here so we can take a look at our sensors, which are our inputs, and the actuators, which are, you know, the outputs. Now to use this, the main thing, and what we're going to use, the main thing is the tags, and this has all these names. Now, you know, you can see whether they're, you know, well, if they're on right now, if they're at a high voltage level because they're lit up, or if they're shadowed out if they're at a low level. Now all our outputs are at a low level because those are, you know, the actuators, and they're all turned off. The other thing we're going to take a look at for the most part are just function blocks. And control I/O is kind of like using function blocks. And while you might want to use counters and timers, and we use them all the time, what we're going to use today for this demo is the logical stuff. And in particular, what we're going to be looking at, you know, we'll be looking at the AND gates. You know, we said we need latchings. Like we need to latch the box, and we need to latch these signals. And what we're going to use pretty exclusively to turn things on and off are these set-reset flip-flops. So we have a sensor signal or a combination of signals that's going to turn something on, and then we have another signal that's going to turn things off. And this is our latch. So for instance, when we saw that demo that we have a high box, we have to latch it. So it has to be latched here. And for that one, for the box, we're going to have it latched until the pallet is fully on the output conveyor. And we'll take a look at that. It's pretty simple. So I'm going to leave him here. And what we're going to start out with is, and the other thing we're going to use a lot, these things F trigger and R trigger, that's the edge trigger. So this is a falling edge and this is a rising edge. And for the most part, we're going to use rising edge. But when we're starting out, we obviously going to start out with our start signal. And we're going to start out with our stop signal. And now when we put these two guys in here, you can see that this one is lit up, that little blue light, and that tells us it's active. And we can see down here that it's active because this LED on the factory I/O is lit up too. Now to set or reset, either ones have to be active high. So if we just connected here, we'd be in a the reset mode forever, and so we can't do that. So we're going to put a NOT gate here, and we'll connect him to here. And when you make the connections, you just have to go from, and I'm not positive of this, but it seems that the only way it works is when you go left to right on the connections. And I'll try to even that up. And what we're going to use here is I am going to use an edge trigger. So when I first press the button, I want to see that rising edge. And when I hit that rising edge, I'm going to set this. And this is basically, I always call it the start process. A lot of people call it the system run. But that is going to be when we're in basically operational mode. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate the emitter signal. And by the way, these are inputs and they show up in green. I'm going to generate my emitter signal, which is here. Now the emitter is going to show up as red, which kind of means it's an output. So I'm going to connect him to there, line him up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this output, and then I'm going to take my start signal again to generate my emitter signal. And this is just a quick and dirty way of doing this, but I can't generate the emitter on a single, and this edge trigger is only going to be true for one scan. And so this will latch high, but then I want to make sure that I get that emitter signal for as long as I hold my finger on that start push button. So that'll generate a signal that's long enough to give me just one box. And what I'm going to do is, once I have that box here, I have to turn on my entry conveyor. So I'm going to take my emitter signal and I'm going to put them down here. And again, I'm going to use these almost in every one of these signals, as I'm going to use these set reset latches, and then they work out great for this program. So I'm going to turn on when this will be my entry conveyor, and so let me put that in. So my conveyor entry, this is what this is going to turn on. So as soon as I see that emitter box, I'm turning on that entry conveyor. Now what I'm turning it off at is I have that load signal. And when I see the load signal go high, that's when the box is fully in position. Well, it's not load, it's loaded. So I want the loaded signal, the input signal. When it gets fully into that position where it's ready to transfer, that's when I want to turn that conveyor off. Now I also have that little conveyor at the very end too. And what I'm going to do with that is, when I first see my pallet sensor, I want to turn on that little extra segment, the load conveyor. So I'm going to find that load signal, and that's my output. And we'll put that through the set reset. So again, the pallet sensor turns it on. And the same thing, the loaded signal is going to be the thing that turns it off. So we'll connect him to there. So now this is basically where that video kind of left off. Is it's in position to be transferred. Now we have to figure out whether it's a high box or a low box. We've got to latch that information, and then we just transfer it on its way. So what I'm going to do for that is I want a little bit of a strobe to tell me when I latch my signal in. And what I have is I have my low sensor, and no matter what type of, and here's where you'll have to get used to how this screen moves around. But when I see, I'm always going to see a low sensor no matter if it's a low box or high box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that through a rising trigger. I'm going to say when I see that signal, I want to evaluate whether it's a low box or a high box. So as soon as I see that, I'm going to say whether it's a low box or a high box. So I'm going to put an AND gate over here and try to move it, and I'm going to say, okay, I've got my low sensor and I've also got my high sensor. So if they're both high, I know it's a high box. So I'm going to say that and that. Now this output right here is telling me that's a high box, but this is not latched. So what I need to do is I need to put that through an AND gate, and my one input will be my strobe, and I know it says it's the low sensor, but what I'm going to call it for this point for going through the rising edges, it's my height strobe signal. And so I have that going in here. Now that tells me that it's a high box, and I'm looking at it at the correct point because this is my strobe. And somehow I'm sure you can put names on here to kind of make it more obvious, but I didn't get that involved with the program, so I'm not quite sure how to do that. But anyway, we need to latch that. So we're going to latch that right here. So we're going to put that in. When I say it's high, I'm going to latch it. Now, how am I going to unlatch it? You know, we showed that signal is called at, and again, high boxes are going left. So when it's at the at left entry signal is when I'm going to unlatch it. And that is when the trailing, you know, when the pallet gets on there. Now that starts out normally high, so when it's passing through there it goes low, but when the trailing edge of the pallet goes through there, it goes back high. So again, we're going to look for the rising edge, and we're going to connect that to that. We're going to have to move, going to have to move him down here some. And that's going to be the thing that's going to unlatch that. So now we've got a high box and we know when we're going to unlatch it. Now the last, well, second to last thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have an AND gate, because we can't turn that on until we get that load, the input that says, yeah, we're fully at that capacitive sensor. We don't want to turn it on too soon. So we need to grab this loaded signal that says, yeah, we're all the way up in front and we're ready to transfer. So that's a loaded signal. And again, we know it's the input because it shows up in green. So when we're in the loaded position and we've got that latch, that's when we're going to turn on. The first thing we have to turn on is there's a little diverter mechanism that's called transfer left, and that's what's going to shove it onto the output conveyor in the right position. So we're going to make that connection. Now we're going to do a similar thing that says this loaded, and we've got a high latch here, and that is going to turn on our output conveyor. So we want the signal that is conveyor left, and basically that's going to be the same type of thing And I think what we can do, so this, okay, so here the thing that transfers left, well, what we can do is, here is the thing that latches our high box. So what we'll do is I put down an AND gate here, and we'll take this input again, we'll put that down here, and I suppose we could have just used this output, but what we're going to have to do here, because this takes us at the left entry is what resets this, we're going to have to leave the conveyor on longer. So we'll go back into our set reset here, and this is kind of a tight squeeze, but we'll put that there, put that there. Now instead of at the left entry, what we're going to have is we're going to have the at left exit is what we're going to use to turn this off, the conveyor off. So let's see. So that's at left exit, and just like the entry signal, it's high, so we want to put it through the rising trigger, because we want to make sure that the box has fully cleared that exit signal before we turn things off. So if we go up here, that'll put that there. Now the last thing we need to do for a box, and then we'll give it a shot and see what it looks like, is I'm going to put a NOT signal in here, because this signal is normally high. I want to make it normally low. So I'll connect there to there, and I'm going to use this as a remover left. Now the one thing in using this program, I know there's a lot more tall boxes than small boxes. So I'm kind of counting, if we run the program, that we'll see a tall box and we'll see whether this logic actually works. So we get the emitter, we turn on the conveyor, we turn on the load signal once we see the pallet sensor. Okay, and then we latch in. Right here is where we latch in that it's a high box. If this works, we'll just copy this whole thing and make it for the low box, and we have to make just a couple changes. And depending on our time constraints, we might leave that for you to do. But that is our file for the control I/O. So let's go back to the factory, and we want to click back here, and I guess we'll hit reset. I'm not sure that does it. And if we go into control I/O, I think we have the same controls here for pause and reset. But we want to go back into here and hit our start push button. Now that's a short box, of course. So I'm just going to reset it and hit the start button again. We're going to wait for a tall box. And predictably, they're all going to be short boxes. Okay, that's a tall box. So here, what we want to see is, it's going to say that's a tall box, and when it gets all the way up here, it's going to transfer. That's a chain transfer drive. Now, our mechanism for our conveyor, our left conveyor should be on. Well, I'm not quite sure what happened there, but that did remove it. Now, let's I wonder if we didn't turn off the transfer mechanism. The transfer mechanism goes on there. Oh, okay. So the transfer mechanism wasn't correct. So what we need to do, I'm going to halt this. I need to kind of delete this. And we need one more set reset in here, because that was still on, which is why it couldn't transfer out. So this is going to turn this on, and what we need to do is we need this trigger right here to also turn that one off. So let me move this guy down and see if I connect there to there, if that'll fix it, and I think it will. And you know, after a while, it's kind of neat where you can kind of make these messy connections and have everything work. So I'm going to reset it, and we're in the run mode again. Now if I go back into my factory I/O, and again we're kind of hoping for a high box here, and that's a high box. So hopefully this will work right. You know, you can take a look at it, and now this should transfer smoothly. So before what was happening, this was staying on, and so it was having a hard time, you know, starting to roll down the conveyors. And now I want to show one more thing. Hopefully we have a high box. So nope. So we'll reset it. Look for a high box again. One of the things you can do is you can also go into these drivers, and you can hit this eyeball, and you can visually see what's going on with your signals. So you can make sure things are working. And this is a really cool function with the factory I/O also. So you can take a look at your signals and see what's going on with your logic. So where do we stand right now? So what we can do for here is we can, and I think I'll just leave this up to you. There's a few things you can do. So that transfers for the high box. You have to copy all of this for the low box, but the only thing is, for the high box, it's when high sensor is high and low sensor is high. For the low box, the high sensor is going to be low, so you just put a NOT gate right here before this AND gate, and then you change everything that says left. Instead of at left entry, it needs to be at right entry, at right exit, and then it's transfer right, conveyor right, remover right. Now, the other thing that is a task for you guys to do, because right now the only way we can get another box is to hit the start push button. So you should automate it so when the box fully disappears, when this emitter signal you know, has the box fully disappear, is to automatically put another box on the conveyor and just have it run continuously. The second thing is, if we look at this control panel, it's got a counter here. Is when the box is fully processed, we want to count how many boxes we've done. And part of that is this yellow button is also a reset. So if we process another bunch of boxes and we want to restart again, we can, you know, press the reset button. And maybe you can, depending on your logic, come up with a little competition for you know, who can process the most boxes in 10 minutes. And I don't know, Tim will buy someone a soda or something if they have the most boxes. But, you know, after I've taken a second look at this control I/O, this is pretty good. Factory I/O in general is great. It does cost money, but you've got a lot of scenes that you can do right now. And they are from, this is fairly basic, but they get pretty complicated. So you can do a lot with it. And again, the best thing about it is you can step through how the program needs to run before you start writing code. You know, the one thing that drives me, well, the one thing that's bad is when the code doesn't work is people just, you know, students just keep adding branch circuit after branch circuit without really understanding what needs to be done to make the program work. You can step the factory I/O through from beginning to end so you know exactly what needs to be done, and then just write the code to do that. And I think it's a great learning tool. So that's our little video with the factory I/O and control I/O. And it seems like without PLC, you know, this, you know, it's got, well, let me go back here. You know, if you know, you've got all these scenes available for you, so there's a lot of opportunities for, you know, doing a lot of programs. Anyway, that's a little video for the factory I/O control I/O. Thanks.